mentioned this in my second fantasy suggestions video, I think. I could be wrong, it could be my third, it could be my first. But I thought, you know what, it's time for a reading. I just felt like chilling out in front of the camera. I've been reading one of my other books in the Derry Good Kind series, the book before this, because in the lounge. This is Soul of the Vile. It's a series which I've shown you before, but today we'll read less. So let's get started. Enter a world where darkness belongs to demons. To Otzi, the original painted man. I normally read the acknowledgements, but I'll skip these today. We can get right to it. Section 1, Tibbetts Brook, 319 after the return. Chapter 1, Aftermath, 319 AR. The great horn sounded. Alan paused in his work, looking up at the lavender wash of the dawn sky. Mist still clung to the air, bringing with it a damp, acrid taste that was all too familiar. A quiet dread built in his gut as he waited in the morning stillness, hoping that it had been his imagination. He was 11 years old. There was a pause, and then the horn blew twice in rapid succession. One long and two short meant south and east, the cluster by the woods. His father had friends amongst the gutters. Behind Arlen, the door to the house opened, and he knew his mother would be there, covering her mouth with her hands. Arlen returned to his work, not needing to be told to hurry. Some chores could wait a day, but the stock still needed to be fed and cows milked. He left the animals in the barns and opened the hay stores, slopped the pigs, and ran to fetch a wooden milk bucket. His mother was already squatting beneath the first of the cows. He snatched the spare stool, and they found cadence in their work, the sound of milk striking wood drumming a funeral march. As they moved to the next pair down the line, Arlen saw his father begin hitching their strongest horse, a 5-year-old chestnut-coloured mare named Missy, to the cart. His face was grim as he worked. What would they find this time? Before long, they were in the cart, trundling towards the small cluster of houses by the woods. It was dangerous there. Over an hour's run to the nearest watered structure, but the lumber was needed. Arlen's mother, wrapped in her worn shawl, held him tightly as they rode. "I'm a big boy, Mum," Arlen complained. "I don't need you to hold me like a baby. I'm not scared." It wasn't entirely true, but it would not do for the other children to see him clinging to his mother as they rode in. They made a mock of him enough as it was. "I am scared," his mother said. "What if it's me who needs to be held?" Feeling suddenly proud, Arlen pulled close to his mother again as they travelled down the road. She could never fool him, but she always knew what to say just the same. A pillar of greasy smoke told them more than they wanted to know long before they reached their destination. They were burning the dead, and starting the fires this early, without waiting for everyone to arrive and pray, meant there were a time they arrived, the few remaining cabin fires had been put out, though in truth there was little left to burn. 15 houses, all reduced to rubble and ash. The wood piles too, Arlen's father said, spitting over the side of the cart. He gestured with his chin towards the blackened ruin that remained of a season's cutting. Arlen grimaced at the thought of how the rickety fence that penned the animals would have to last another year, and immediately felt guilty. It was only wood after all. The town speaker approached their cart as it pulled up. Celia, whom Arlen's mother sometimes called Celia the Baron, was a hard woman, tall and thin, with skin like tough leather. Her long grey hair was pulled into a tight bun, and she wore her shawl like a badge of office. She brooked no nonsense, as Arlen had learned more than once at the end of her stick, but today he was comforted by her presence. Like Arlen's father, something about Celia made him feel safe. Though she had never had children of her own, Celia acted as a parent to anyone in Tibbetts Brook, or to everyone. Few could match her wisdom, and fewer still her stubbornness. When you were on Celia's good side, it felt like the safest place in the world. It's good that you've come, Jeff, Celia told Arlen's father. Sylvie and young Arlen too, she said, nodding to them. We need every hand we can get. Even the boy can help. Arlen's father grunted, stepping down from the cart. I brought my tools, he said. Just tell me where we can throw in. Arlen collected the precious tools from the back of their cart. Metal was scarce in the brook, and his father was proud of his 2 shovels, his pick, and his saw. They would all see heavy use this day. How many lost? Jeff asked, though he didn't really seem to want to know. 27, Celia said. Sylvie choked and covered her mouth, tears welling in her eyes. Jeff spat again. Any survivors? He asked. A few, Celia said. Many, she pointed with her stick at a boy who stood staring at the funeral pyre. Ran all the way to my house in the dark. Sylvie gasped. No one had ever run so far and lived. The wards on Brian Cutter's house held for most of the night, Celia went on. He and his family watched everything. A few others fled the callings and suckered there until the fire spread and their roof caught. They waited in the burning house until the beams started to crack, and then took their chances outside in the minutes before dawn. The callings killed Brian's wife Mina and their son Pal, but the others made it. The burns will heal and the children will be alright in time, but the others... She didn't need to finish the sentence. Survivors of a demon attack had a way of dying soon after. Not all, or even most, but enough. Some of them took their own lives, and others simply stared blankly, refusing to eat or drink until they wasted away. It was said you did not truly survive an attack until a year and a day had passed. There are still a dozen unaccounted for, Celia said, but with little hope in her voice. We'll dig them out, Jeff agreed grimly, looking at the collapsed houses, many still smouldering. The Cutters built their homes mostly out of stone to protect against fire, but even stone would burn if the wards failed and enough flame demons gathered in one place. Jeff joined the other men, and a few of the stronger women throw Arlen into the air when they came to trade for wood. Now Brian sat in the ashes beside his ruined house, slowly knocking his head against the blackened wall. He muttered to himself and clutched his arms tightly, as if cold. Arlen and the other children were put to work carrying water and sorting through the wood piles for salvageable lumber. There were still a few warm months left in the year, but there would not be time to cut enough wood to last the winter. They would be burning dung again this year, and the house would reek. Again, Arlen weathered a wave of guilt. He was not in the pyre, nor banging his head in shock, having lost everything. There were worse fates than a house smelling of dung. More and more villagers arrived as the morning wore on, bringing their families and whatever provisions they could spare. They came from Fishing Hole and Town Square. They came from the Boggins Hill and Soggy Marsh. Some even came all the way from Southwatch. And one by one, Celia greeted them with the grim news and put them to work. With more than 100 hands, the men doubled their efforts, half of them continuing to dig as the others descended upon the only salvageable structure left in the cluster, Brian Cutter's house. Celia led Brian away, somehow supporting the giant man as he stumbled, while the men cleared the rubble and began hauling new stones. A few took out warding kits and began to paint fresh wards, while children made thatch. The house would be restored by nightfall. Arlen was partnered with Cobby Fisher in hauling wood. The children had amassed a sizable pile, though it was only a fraction of what had been lost. Cobby was a tall, thickly built boy with dark curls and hairy arms. He was popular amongst the other children, but it was popularity built at others' expense. Few children cared to weather his insults, and fewer still his beatings. Cobby had tortured Arlen for years, and the other children had gone along. Jess Farm was the northernmost in the brook, far from where the children tended to gather in Town Square, and Arlen spent most of his free time wandering the brook by himself. Sacrificing him to Cobby's wrath seemed a fair trade to most children. Whenever Arlen went fishing, or passed by a fishing hole on the way to Town Square, Cobby and his friends seemed to hear about it, and were waiting in the same spot on his way home. Sometimes they just called him names, or pushed him, but other times he came home bloody and bruised, and his mother shouted at him for fighting. Finally, Arlen had enough. He left a stout stick hidden in that spot, and the next time Cobby and his friends pounced, Arlen pretended to run, only to produce the weapon as if from thin air and come back at them swinging. Cobby was the first one struck. A hard blow that left him crying in the dirt with blood running from his ear. Willem received a broken finger, and Gart walked with a limp for over a week. It had done nothing to improve Arlen's popularity amongst the other children, and Arlen's father had caned him. But the other boys never bothered him again. Even now, Cobby gave him a wide berth and flinched if Arlen made a sudden move, even though he was bigger by far. Survivors. Bill Baker called suddenly, standing by a collapsed house at the edge of the cluster. I can hear them trapped in the root cellar. Immediately, everyone dropped what they were doing and rushed over. Clearing the rubble would take too long, so the men began to dig. Bending their backs with silent fervour, soon after they broke through the side of the cellar and began hauling out the survivors. They were filthy and stumbled drunkenly. Arlen ran to them, tugging under his other arm to steady him. "Jolly, what are you doing here?" Sylvie asked. Jolly seldom left his workshop in Town Square. Arlen's mother had told the tale 1,000 times of how she and her brother had run the farrier's shop together before Jeff began breaking his horse's shoes on purpose for a reason to come court. "Come to court, Annacutter," Jolly mumbled. He pulled at his hair, having already torn whole clumps free. We'd just opened the bolt hole when they came through the wards. His knees buckled, pulling Arlen and Sylvie down with his weight. Kneeling in the dust, he wept. Arlen looked at the other survivors. Annacutter wasn't among them. His throat tightened as the children passed. He knew every one of them, their families, what their houses were like inside and out, their animals' names. They met his eyes for a second as they went by, and in that moment, he lived the attack through their eyes. He saw himself shoved into a cramped hole in the ground where those unable to fit turned to face the callings and the fire. Suddenly he started gasping, unable to stop until Jeff slapped him on the back and brought him to his senses. They were finishing a cold midday meal when a horn sounded on the far side of the brook. "Not two in one day," Sylvie gasped, covering her mouth. "Bah!" Celia grunted. "At midday. Use your head, girl." "Then what?" Celia ignored her, rising to fetch a horn blower to signal back. Kevin Marsh had his horn ready, as the folks from Stocky Marsh always did. It was easy to get separated in the marshes, and no one wanted to be wandering lost when the swamp demons rose. Kevin's cheeks inflated like a frog's chin as he blew a series of notes. "Messenger on," Corin Marsh advised Sylvie. A grey beard, he was speaker for Soggy Marsh and Kevin's father. Arlen didn't know him, so he was a Marsh, or a Watch. They tended to keep to themselves. They probably saw the smoke. Kevin's telling them what's happened and where everyone is. "A messenger in spring?" Arlen asked. "I thought they come in the fall after harvest. We only finished planting this past moon." "Messenger never came last fall," Corin said, spitting foamy brown juice from the root he was chewing through the gap of his missing teeth. "We been worried something happened. Thought we might not have a messenger bring salt till next fall. Or maybe that was the Callings got the free cities and we's cut off." "The Callings could never get the free cities," Arlen said. "Arlen, shush your mouth," Sylvie hissed. "He's your elder. Let the boy speak," Corin said. "Ever been to a free city, boy?" he asked Arlen. "No," Arlen admitted. "Never know anyone who had?" "No," Arlen said again. "So what makes you such an expert?" Corin asked. "And no one been to one except the messengers. They're the only ones what braved the night to go so far. Who's to say the free cities ain't just places like the brook? If the Callings can get us, they can get them too." "Old Hogg is from the free cities," Arlen said. Roscoe Hogg was the richest man in the brook. He ran the general store, which was the crux of all commerce in Tibbetts Brook. "Ay," Corin said, "and old Hogg told me years ago that one trip was enough for him. He meant to go back after a few years, but said it wasn't worth the risk. So you ask him if the free cities are any safer than anywhere else." Arlen didn't want to believe it. There had to be places safe in the world. But again, the image of himself being thrown into the cellar flashed Strapped to the horse's saddle was a harness holding a number of different spears. His face was grim as he approached, but his shoulders were high and proud. He scanned the crowd and spotted the speaker easily as she stood giving orders. He turned his horse towards her. Riding a few paces behind on a heavily laden cart, pulled by a pair of dark brown mollies, was the jongleur. His clothes were a brightly coloured patchwork, and he had a lute resting on the bench next to him. His hair was a colour Arlen had never seen before, like a pale carrot, and his skin was so fair it seemed the sun had never touched it. His shoulders slumped, and he looked thoroughly exhausted. There was always a jongleur with the annual messenger. To the children and some of the adults, the jongleur was the more important of the two. For as long as Arlen could remember, it had been the same man, grey-haired, but spry and full of cheer. This new one was younger, and he seemed sullen. Children ran to him immediately, and the young jongleur perked up, the frustration melting from his face so quickly, Arlen began to doubt it was ever there. In an instant, the jongleur was off the cart and spinning his coloured balls into the air as the children cheered. Others, Arlen among them, forgot their work, drifting towards the newcomer, or newcomers. Salaya whirled on them, having none of it. The day is no longer because the messengers come, she barked, back to work. There were grumbles, but everyone went back to work. Not you, Arlen, Salaya said. Come here. Arlen pulled his eyes from the jongleur and went to her as the messenger arrived. Salaya, Baron, the messenger asked. Just Salaya will do, Salaya replied primly. The messenger's eyes widened and he blushed, the tops of his pale cheeks turning a deep red above his beard. He leaped down from his horse and bowed low. Apologies, he said. I did not think. Craig, your usual messenger, told me that's what you are called. It's pleasing to know what Gray thinks of me after all these years, Salaya said, sounding not at all pleased. Thought, the messenger corrected. He's dead, Mom. Dead? Salaya asked, looking suddenly sad. Was it? The messenger shook his head. It was a chill took him, not callings. I'm Reagan, your messenger this year, as a favour to his widow. The guild will select a new messenger for you starting next fall. A year and a half again before the next messenger, Salaya asked, sounding like she was readying a scolding. We barely made it through this past winter without the fall assault, she said. I know you take it for granted in Milne, but half our meat and fish spoiled for lack of proper curing. And what of our letters? Sorry, Mom, Reagan said. Your towns are well off the common roads, and paying a messenger to commit for a month and more of travel each year is costly. The Messengers Guild is short-handed, what with Craig catching that chill. He chuckled and shook his head, but noticed Salaya's visage darken in response. No offense meant, Mom, Reagan said. He was my friend as well. It's not many of us messengers get to go with a roof above, a bed below, and a young wife at our side. The night usually gets us before that, you see. I do, Salaya said. Do you have a wife, Reagan? She asked. Ay, the messenger said, that to her pleasure and my pain, I see my mare more than my bride. He laughed, confusing Arlen, who didn't think having a wife not miss you was funny. Salaya didn't seem to notice. What if you couldn't see her at all? She asked. What if he said, his eyes flicking to the funeral pyre. We cannot tell the rain when to come, nor the wind, nor the cold, Saliah said, not the callings either. So life must go on despite these things. Life goes on, Reagan agreed. But if there's anything I or my jongleur can do to help, I've a strong back, and I've treated calling wounds many times. Your jongleur is helping already, Saliah said, nodding towards the young man as he sang and did his tricks, distracting the young ones while their kin do their work. As for you, I've much to do over the next few days, if we're to recover from this loss. I won't have time to hand the mail and read to those who haven't learned their letters. I can read to those who can't, Mom, Reagan said, but I don't know your town well enough to distribute. No need, Saliah said, pulling Arlen forward. Arlen here will take you to the general store in the town square. Give the letters and packages to Roscoe Hogg when you deliver the salt. Most everyone will come running now that the salt's in, and Roscoe is one of the few in town with letters and numbers. The old crook will complain and try to insist on payment, but you tell him that in time of trouble, the whole town must throw in. You tell him to give out the letters and read to those who can't, or I'll not lift a finger the next time the town wants to throw a rope around his neck. Reagan looked closely at Saliah, perhaps trying to tell if she was joking, but her stony face gave no indication. He bowed again. Hurry along then, Saliah said. Lift your feet and you'll both be back as everyone is readying to leave here for the night. If you and your jongleur don't want to pay Roscoe for a room, any here will be glad to offer you their homes. She shooed the two of them away and turned back to scold those pausing in their work to stare at the newcomers. So that's a break in the page. We are on page 14. I thought I'd leave it at that for now. I want to gauge your reaction on what you think of me reading a book. If you enjoy it, please let me know in the comments, and I can do a longer video next time. I don't think I will do one whole book, it would take forever. I think more I'll just pick books and read the first chapter. It'll be a great way for you to get an idea of a book, see if you like the sound of it, see if it gets you in, and then you can purchase it. I'll have a link to this book in the bio. Try and source it in your local store, of course. It's just going to be there if you want something convenient to order online. Reading this makes me really want to reread the book. It was fun doing this. Yeah, let me know what you think. I can do it in a soft-spoken voice, but I think people tend to like the whispers more. Check it out. Let me know if you enjoyed it. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't, that always really helps me out. Like, comment, all of that. But I definitely enjoyed doing this. Sorry to the subscriber. I forget your name. You know what? I reckon I wrote subscriber's name down. I keep track of everything. Let's have a look. Did I write the name down? I know I did, guys. This is shameful. Maybe it's at the top. I write a lot of notes in my phone all the time. Ashley, there you go. I keep track of these things, guys. So if you're a subscriber, I do pay attention to your names. Like when you pop up multiple times, I really appreciate the comments. Ashley wanted